All right, welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. You know how we do it here. We take one document and we really get into the nitty-gritty.
Absolutely.
And today's topic is super interesting, I think. It's all about Secret Service protection.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So who gets it, why they get it. We all kind of have this general idea, the president gets Secret Service protection. Maybe some diplomats get it. But we're going way beyond that today.
Much deeper.
Yeah, much deeper. So we've got this document. It's just titled Pasted Text.
Okay.
And it's actually lays out who's eligible and the different categories. And there's some surprising ones.
Yeah, I think people will be really surprised to learn that it's not just sort of keeping people safe from physical harm, as we think of the Secret Service, but it really is a reflection of the nation's priorities.
Oh, for sure.
Political stability, even the symbolic importance of certain people in a democracy.
Definitely.
So, a lot to dig into.
Yeah, a lot to dig into. Well, let's start with the obvious ones. Like right off the bat, the president, vice president, their families.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Immediate families. Yeah. It makes sense.
Continuity of government, making sure that there's no chaos, if there's some kind of crisis. But it's not just tradition. It's actually like in the law.
Yes, exactly. 18 USC 35(6). It spells out, who gets it, and it even, talks about family members and all that.
Right.
But, think about it. I mean, immediate family is sort of, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What about extended family? Like, where do you draw the line? Does a niece or a nephew qualify?
Yes, they.
It's not always so clear cut.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And speaking of long-term protection, former presidents, their spouses also get lifetime Secret Service protection, unless they decline, which almost never happens.
Yeah, I guess when you've been in that position.
Yeah.
Maybe the risk never really goes away.
Yeah. Well, and even their children.
Yeah, their children are protected till they're 16.
Until they're 16.
Yeah. Can you imagine growing up like that?
Yeah.
Always being watched, never really fitting in. I mean, would you trade, a normal childhood for that level of safety?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's a tough question.
That's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about election season.
Yeah.
Because major presidential, vice presidential candidates, they also get protection.
Yes.
Usually starting like 120 days before the general election. I imagine that's a big adjustment, just having security around all the time.
Well, yeah, and it gets even more complicated. So the Department of Homeland Security, they can actually decide that other candidates, lower down the ticket. They might need protection if there are, threats or perceived threats.
Yeah.
So you can imagine in a close election, that could be a very controversial decision.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who decides and what are the guidelines they use?
Right.
It just adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. Now, let's shift gears to international relations. Visiting heads of state, other dignitaries.
Yes.
Those folks also get Secret Service protection when they come to the U.S. Again, makes sense.
Right. You don't want to have an international incident.
Yeah.
But, it's the State Department that makes these requests to the Secret Service.
Oh, okay.
And it's got to be really complicated. You're coordinating with, a foreign security detail, understanding different protocols, cultural sensitivities. It's a lot.
Right. You don't want to offend anybody.
It's a very delicate dance.
Yeah. Now, that makes you wonder about other situations where the lines get a little blurry, like when individuals get protection based on an executive order or special circumstances. We're talking about folks like the Secretary of Homeland Security, even the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, well, the Speaker, for example. So usually their protection, it's handled by the Capitol Police.
Oh, okay.
But the Secret Service can step in if needed. So it really highlights the layers of security.
Yeah.
And the potential for, overlapping jurisdictions.
Right. And that makes me think of those like what if scenarios, like what about a Supreme Court justice facing, some serious threats.
Right.
Or a celebrity that's like, maybe they're an activist.
Yeah.
And they're getting a lot of heat for a cause that they're passionate about. So who decides in those situations
right.
if they need protection? And what are the factors they're looking at?
Well, the criteria It often involves the nature of the threat, the person's profile, the potential impact on, national security or public order.
Yeah.
But, it's constantly evolving,
Yeah.
as the world changes. I mean, think about it. New technologies, new forms of communication.
Right.
Yeah, global affairs, they all play a role.
It's a lot. It's hard to keep up with, honestly. So just to recap, we've got mandatory protection for, key officials, lifetime for former presidents, special measures for elections, a whole protocol for international dignitaries.
Yep.
And then these fascinating kind of special cases.
Right. It's quite a system.
Yeah, it really is. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I guess it kind of brings up the question of how do we balance the need for security,
Yeah.
with individual freedoms?
Yeah.
And, with the image of a democratic society. I mean, that tension is always there.
Yeah.
It's something that we just have to keep in mind, as we deal with this increasingly complex world.
That's a great point and a great point to end on.
Yeah, food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.